Rome wasn't built in a day. We all know that. Everyone hears that. But Rome also didn't fall apart overnight either. It took hundreds of years for Rome to reach its peak, but it also took time, hundreds of years, for Rome to decay and fall apart. And that is representative of life, because you don't achieve worthwhile goals quickly or easily. They take time. They take struggle. They take relentless pursuit day in and day out. That's what it takes. But also, things don't usually fall apart quickly either. At least at first, it's a slow process. A little slip here, a little setback over there, a little wearing down of discipline and will over time. That's the thing. Success and failure are generally slow processes. Either slowly building things up or gradually tearing them down. And that's why I say you've got to pay attention. You have to watch. You have to watch every single second. Because those seconds, they turn into minutes. And minutes turn into hours, and hours turn into days, and days turn into years. And so, that second that just went by, that counted. And so did that second. And so did that one. And in those precious seconds, you were either building or you were decaying. You were either gaining ground or you were losing ground in that second. And in every second. Every second counts. So, make every second. How do you stop making excuses? This is actually pretty simple. Yeah, and I said it the other day, and you have to realize, you have to know, you have to accept that all your excuses are lies. They are lies, all of them. Think about the things that you tell yourself, the lies you use to rationalize taking the easy road. Taking the easy road and leaving discipline behind. Think about them. You don't have time. That's a lie. You don't have support. That's a lie. You don't have the equipment or the gear. Lies. You don't know the best way. Who cares? That's a lie. Or you're too old or you're too young. Of course you're too old or too young. Lie. And there's you're too busy. Sure you are. That's a lie. And you're too tired or you're too sore or you're just plain not feeling it. Lies, lies, lies. And the list goes on and on and on. And it doesn't stop if you don't make it stop. So recognize the excuses are not valid. They aren't. They're trumped up. They're conjured up. They're fabricated. They're lies. And how do you stop the lies? You stop the lies with the truth. The truth. The truth will set you free. The truth will stand, and the truth will deliver you from procrastination and laziness and the downward spiral that comes with a lack of discipline. So don't believe the lies, believe the truth. And the truth is, you have time. You have the skill, you have the knowledge and the support and the willpower and the discipline to get it done. So cast out the lies, burn them down, and listen to the truth, and live the truth, and go out and get it done. Self-help or self-management or self-improvement. I don't really like what those words have come to mean these days. Because there's a lot of people out there that are constantly trying to improve themselves by looking for the one change. The one change, right? The one change in their life that's gonna make their dreams come true. And even worse, on top of that, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of self-help gurus and these hyperactive motivational speakers and these other self-appointed modern Zen yoga warriors that they're trying to sell the one thing. They're trying to sell the 9 steps or the enlightened path that's going to allow you to unlock all of your human potential and fulfill the dreams so you can live the life that you've always wanted to live. Now, I'm no guru, and I definitely don't claim to be. I'm just a man. But I will tell you this, it isn't one thing, and it isn't 10 things, and it isn't 100 things. It isn't a quick path, and there are no shortcuts. Meditation won't get you there, and neither will a miracle drug or an organic supplement or some superfood. Getting better isn't a hack or a trick or a one change that you need to make. Getting better is a campaign. It's a campaign. It's a daily, a weekly, it's an hourly fight. An incessant fight that doesn't stop against weakness and against temptation and against laziness. It's a campaign of discipline. It's a campaign of hard work and dedication. It's waking up early and going to bed late and grinding out every second in between. Every single day. So, you want to get better? You want to self-improve? Stop looking for a shortcut and go find your alarm clock and find your discipline and find your guts and your passion and your drive and find your will. And then you will find your freedom. Those days when I'm tired or worn out or just basically sick of the grind. What do I do on those days? I go anyways. I get it done, even if I'm just going through the motions. I go through the motions. I don't really want to work out. I work out. I really don't want to hammer on a project. I hammer on the project. Don't really want to get up and get out of bed. Yeah, I get up and get out of bed. Now, these could be signals that you need some time off. And those signals might be right. They could be correct. But don't take today off. Not today. Wait until tomorrow. Don't give in to the immediate gratification that is whispering in your ear. Shut that down. Do not listen to that little voice. Instead, go through the motions. Lift the weights, sprint the hill, work on the project, get out of bed. Now, as an overall rule, I do not like procrastination. You need to get things done. But if you are going to rest, that is one thing that you should procrastinate on. That's the one thing I want you to put off until tomorrow. And if, when tomorrow comes, you still feel like you need to rest or you need to take a break, then okay. Take it. But the chances are you won't. You won't need that rest. Chances are you will realize that the desire to rest was just weakness. It was just the desire to take the path of least resistance, the downhill path, the easy path. And by simply going through the motions, you overcame that path. And you stayed on the righteous path, the disciplined path. You stayed on the war path, which is right where you know that you belong. I keep getting asked this type of question: how do I get discipline, or how do I want discipline, or how do I maintain discipline? And the answer, it's a simple answer, but obviously it's not easy. And there's all kinds of little tricks and methods that people talk about. And, they have some merit. Maybe they do work, these things, do the little things people say, and wake up early. I say that, and write things down, and take cold showers, and tell everyone what you're going to do. So broadcast it, and make promises, or make bets with your friends of something that you don't want to lose. And those things, those ideas, they're cool. I'm sure they're going to have some impact, and if they work for you, that's awesome. But the fact of the matter is that the reason discipline is hard to maintain is because it is hard to maintain. That's what makes discipline hard. It's hard. And if you hear me claim that discipline is easy for me, then straight up, that's just my ego talking. That's what that is. Because I'm, unfortunately, just as human as everyone else. And it is work to maintain the discipline. That's what it is. Work. Holding the line. Maintaining the standard. Giving no slack, none. That's the discipline. That's the discipline, and it is hard. And if there's one thing I would say that does make it easier, it's to envision what it feels like when you're done. What it feels like after you've worked out, or you've held the line on your food intake, or you've pushed through some monotonous project that you have to do, and all those things. When they're done, they feel good. And contrary to that, envision what you will feel like later when you let the discipline slack. You know the feeling. feeling weak and defeated, and you know that you're falling behind. So get to know those two different types of feelings and ask yourself which one you want to feel in 10 minutes or in a half an hour. When the thing is done, when the discipline has been implemented. Remember what that feels like, and then remember that those minutes and those hours, they turn into weeks and months and years, and holding the line in those critical minutes will put you in an infinitely better place, physically and mentally, if you maintain the discipline. If things go wrong, they always seem to happen at once, and they just compound on top of each other, and it's pretty easy sometimes to feel beaten when you're faced with all those issues and all those problems, and they all hit you at the same time. But let me tell you, that doesn't mean give up. In fact, it means the opposite. It means it's time for you to fight harder, to dig in. It means it's time for you to go on the warpath. And that starts with one of the fundamental laws of combat leadership: prioritize and execute. What's the biggest problem? What's causing the most stress? Family? Okay. Sit them down. Explain where you are at. Be blunt, be upfront, and then give them the simple plan of how you're going to get things back on track. Don't sugarcoat it. You give it to them straight. Next, you got some late payments. Call those creditors up. Explain to them what's going on. Set up some kind of a minimum payment plan, so you can start making some progress and get them off your back. And then you got your job, right? You're falling behind at work. Okay, talk to your boss. Face it. Tell him that you're going to step up your game. Tell him you're going to be at work early, you're going to be at work late, you're going to be at work during lunch, you're going to be wherever you need to be whenever he needs you to be there. Tell him you're going to get after it, and tell him that you're 100% committed to supporting him and the company and the mission. And then you get started.
How can failing to align yourself with reality work? How is that possibly going to work? Well, you say, well, I can, if I lie, I get away with something. It's like, no, you don't. I tell you, I swear this is true. In all of my clinical practice, I have never, ever seen anyone ever get away with anything even once. You think the chickens won't come home to roost. It's like, all that means is you're too stupid to see what your lies caused, or too blind or too self-deceptive. You just don't see it. And so you don't get away with anything. Nothing. It's terrifying to actually understand that. It's terrifying. What if you can't get away with anything, ever? Well, that's the judgmental God, fundamentally. And then, of course you can't get away with anything, because imagine that you took a flexible plastic comb, and you bent it backwards, and you say, well, I got away with that. It's like, well, what's going to happen when you let go? It's going to snap back and hit you in the face, and that's life, man. You warp the structure of reality? You think you are someone who can warp the structure of reality with your words and get away with it? Really? No, man, that should terrify you right to the core of your soul. You're not God. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Because you can't tell the truth, right? Because who are you to tell the truth? That's a mighty tall order, man. But you can stop saying things that you know are lies. And that will change your life if you do that.
Why would it
Crucial,
change
because,
their life?
well, how can you adapt to reality when you falsify it? And you think, well, I'm just lying to other people. It's no, you're not. You can't just lie to other people, because what you say becomes you, especially if you practice it. Because we build ourselves out of words. And that can be lies in action too. It's like, don't say things you know to be false. That's a good start, man. And it aligns yourself with the truth. And how can that be a bad idea? How could you possibly defend the idea that you could warp the structure of reality and get away with it? I mean, like I said, who do you think you are? Reality is, you don't mess with it. Like, it kills you, and it'll torture you quite a lot before doing that if you're particularly unlucky. So beware. You know, they say the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. That's that judgmental God. It's like, you violate your conscience, man, you will pay. That's hell. Do you want the horror of failure or the certainty of failure? The horror of potential failure or the certainty of failure? Because if you don't do this, you will fail. Now, it'll be put off, but it will absolutely happen. And so that fear, I understand why that stops people. It's no joke to be rejected. And it's going to happen while you practice. And it's a real fear. But you're deluding yourself by thinking that there's a no fear option. There's just a delayed fear option, right? Because if you don't get this right, well, you're going to fail for sure. And then you're going to be miserable and vindictive and bitter and anxiety ridden. And you're going to cause trouble for yourself. And you're going to take it out on women and other men. And like, that's an ugly path, man. And so I see why you're afraid, but you should be way more afraid of that. And that's a nice way to help people get their thinking straight about fear. It's like, no zero fear path. There is nothing that will make you more powerful than your words. And so if you think that reading and writing is for pansies and dimwits, you know, or teachers' pets, you're seriously misinformed. And so, you know, I talk to people like Jocko Willink, and Jocko's as tough a guy as you could ever hope to encounter about literacy, and a number of other people too who are also seriously tough guys. They all know perfectly well that literacy is a huge part of what's made them unstoppable. And you don't take that lightly. You know, it's really serious, and it's a failing of our education system that that literacy isn't marketed properly to young men. It's like, straighten up. Speak properly. Write. Learn to write. Why? Because that's the same as learning to think. And why should you think? Well, because you won't do as many stupid things and your horizons will widen. And then too, when you need to entice people along your journey, hopefully somewhere good, you'll be able to do it because you'll be compelling. Let's say the marketing association between toughness and dangerousness and literacy. There's something wrong about that, we think, some weird way, and that's wrong. It's like, sure, you should be physically tough, and you should be tough in your temperament, as well as having the capacity for play and compassion. You know, that has to be developed too. But that's not enough. And I don't care how tough you are physically, you're nowhere near as tough as you would be if you were physically tough and really literate. And then you're an unstoppable force, and hopefully for good. And that's a much tougher battle than, you know, being tough for your own idiotic, selfish ends. That's just pathetic. And so get your words together and then see what you can do. And don't be thinking that that's somehow beneath you. That just means you're stupid that you think that. You don't know anything. You think that. It's wrong. And you're limiting yourself so much you can't even imagine it. You might not even figure it out till you're 60 and then it's too late. So read, write, think. Why should you read? Well, do you want to be stupid? Do you want to be stupid? What happens when you're stupid? You walk into walls because you don't see them. And if someone comes along who's more educated than you, more literate and cannier, you'll lose, man. You'll lose. And you'll lose too because you can't think properly. So you won't aim at the right things, and you won't be informed by the great individuals of the past. And you need that. We're historical creatures. This isn't optional. It helps you become who you could be. helps you move out into the world and have your great adventure and to bring people along. God only knows what you can do if you've got your words lined up properly. And young men would listen to that if someone who knew what they were talking about was telling them that. There's no safe path. There's a noble path. There's an honorable path. There's no safe path. And possibly you wouldn't want that anyways because, well, who are you exactly, you know? Look at you, you know, warrior stock. Every single one of your ancestors has stayed alive for 3.5 billion years. It's like, good work, man. That's a lot. And so, what makes you so sure you're built for safety? What makes you so sure that that's what we should strive for? And then if you want an adventure, I'll tell you what an adventure is. You tell the truth as nearly as you can, and you'll have the adventure of your life. That's for sure. And that isn't trying to fit in because you're naive or, you know, because you're too afraid to lie. That doesn't make you telling the truth if you're too afraid to lie. That's, you know, in a cowardly sort of way. There's a wise way of being too afraid to lie. It's lies that turn competence into tyranny. So don't lie unless you want to be an incompetent tyrant. And you think that's easier. It's like, in some ways, I suppose, it's easier because you can slide into that. But existentially, it's hell. And hell has this weird quality because it feels like it's eternal. Money has its utility, primarily as a tool for doing things, really. You know, you can think about it as a means for obtaining luxury items, but that gets dull pretty quickly for most people that have any sense. It's like, I've been to the houses of very wealthy people, and some of them are quite remarkable, but most of them, because they're creative people. But most of the time, I remember going to a gated community, for example, in California, and it was a huge house. It was probably 10,000 square feet. But it was no different than a 2,000 square foot house. It was just bigger. Like the stoves were bigger, the fridge was bigger, the wine cellar was bigger, the rooms were bigger. Who cares? It's more to take care of. It's not helpful for anything unless you're using it for a creative purpose. And, you know, they also lived in a gated community, and you can hardly imagine anything duller than that. You know, like, there's nothing there. There's no bars. There's no nightlife. There's no nightclubs. There's no corner stores. There's no churches. There's nowhere for people to hang out. There's not even any sidewalks. So who cares? Males who occupy positions of power are much more attractive to women. So there's a famous Canadian psychologist, team of Canadian psychologists, Margot Wilson and Martin Daly, who worked out at Hamilton, at McMaster, Canada's most outstanding evolutionary psychologists, did a study at one point showing that, first of all, they established the relationship between inequality and male aggression. The correlation is like 0.8. It's off the charts, man. It's like, it's one of, maybe it might be the most powerful relationship between two hypothetically independent variables that psychologists or social scientists have ever discovered. It's off the charts. So inequality fosters male-on-male violence, and it's because of competition for scarce resources, and it's driven by sexual selection pressures, roughly speaking.
Yes.
One of the things that Daly and Wilson did, and I believe this was in Chicago as well, they did an ethnological, anthropological study of the consequence of interracial murder in the gang setting in Chicago. So basically what would happen is two gangs were vying for territorial dominance, let's say, and there was some kind of violent exchange. So let's call it a fight. Well, the thing is, if you're in one gang and I'm in another, and we engage in a violent altercation, one of us perhaps might die, but who's going to die is a toss-up, right? So that means that I can plead self-defense if I'm involved in that altercation. Well, and so generally what happened was that the plea was self-defense, the charge was plea bargained down to involuntary manslaughter or to manslaughter. The person was thrown in jail or sentenced for perhaps 3 years and served something like 18 months. And then when they re-entered the fray, when they were back out on the streets, their credibility had increased substantially, and so had their probability of success. So the left's concern with inequality is a justifiable concern. The problem is we don't know what to do with it. We don't know what to do about it. It's very difficult to shovel money and other resources, because it isn't only money that this sort of process applies to. It's very difficult to shovel resources from the pile at the top down to the many at the bottom who are hovering around zero.
Yeah.
So it's something that has to be taken into account because, well, first, it's not good for everybody to be stacking up at zero, and second, it destabilizes the society itself. So, but that doesn't mean we know what to do about it. That's the critical thing. It also doesn't mean that the reason that the people at the top have most of the resources, regardless of what those resources are, it doesn't mean that the reason they have them is because they're exploiting the people at the bottom. Now, there is an element of exploitation in any complex productive system, always, because they don't operate completely fairly, right? So yeah, suffering is built into the fabric of human existence. And so you are vulnerable and you will die. And you can, that's harsh. That's tragic, I would say. And tragedy is built into being. And so to the degree that you partake in that tragedy, you could consider yourself, although I think it's the wrong way of conceptualizing it, you could consider yourself as a victim among the universality of victimhood. I think that's not a helpful way of looking at it because it leads to despair. But to think of yourself as a particular victim, or to think of yourself as a victim among the privileged, I think that gets dangerous extraordinarily rapidly.
I'm a big-time introvert. How you address it is you face it. You face it every day. You face it every single day of your life. Where you say, okay, like if you're fat, you need to lose weight. It's patience. It's patience in this fact of accepting who you are right now. I'm fat. I don't like myself. Accepting the fact that if you lose 3 or 4 pounds, that's a huge accomplishment. You have to live in your own fucking world. You cannot judge yourself. That's why social media and all these things are horrible. You can't judge yourself off of the so-called competition that we have made up in our mind. The things that, how people look, how people act, how smart someone is. This is a race that you run completely alone. And you're all by yourself. I had tons of sticky notes all over my mirror. It wasn't like be better than John or be as fast as whoever. Okay, David, yesterday you did this. Today, our next goal for the week is this. So I had a year goal, weekly goals, daily goals, hourly goals, and the big goal was I lied a lot growing up. I wanted to be accepted. One goal was, let's go one day without lying. Let's go one day, and then when I would lie to somebody, I would say, hey man, I had to go back now and apologize, say, hey man, I lied to you. You know how hard it is to go back to somebody and say, I lied to you? Hey man, you know what? Back there, I lied to you, dude. I was really jacked up. So I figured out these ways of total accountability. Like right now, I had to run this morning before I talked to you, because why? That's what I'm about. I'm about mind, body, fitness. A lot of folks talk so much shit about, hey, I'm gonna change your life. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Are you accountable for what you're doing? Are you accountable? And I mean to the T for what you're saying. I am. And that's where it started. It started with that total accountability of, let's not lie today. Let's tell people the truth about who you are. And when you can get on and tell someone, like I'm doing right now, exactly how fucked up you are, that's the goal in life. To put your life on a billboard, on the busiest road, in the busiest highway in the world, and say, this is how fucked up I used to be. Take it or leave it. When you really sit back at your life and you are in that dark room and you're looking at where you started from and you tell yourself, God, dog, man, my mom is this way. My soon-to-be stepdad got murdered. My dad beat the shit out of me. I can't read and write to save my fucking soul. I've lied about it to everybody. I've cheated on all these tests. My God, man. And then you put a goal in your mind. How are you gonna feel, man, when you accomplish this goal coming from that shit? Coming from the fucking hell you came from. A lot of people start from a good starting point. They have a good foundation. What if you can surpass all of these motherfuckers? What if everybody who was fucking way up here started up here, and you started with no legs. You had to grow fucking legs to even start walking, and then crawling, and then running, and then you start passing people with all this given to them. I had to use all this negative shit that was making me weak and horrible as a person, I had to use this as the power that now fueled me. I had to flip it on its head and say, hold up. This might be exactly what I need. The darkness is exactly what I need. It's how you look at your situation. And I was looking at it all fucked up. There's a lot of power in that list. So in that list of who you are, what makes you fucked up, all these other things, it goes back to, once again, accepting. You have to first accept it before you can fix it. A lot of people walk around, oh man, I'm good. I'm good. No, you're not. You have to accept what you're not. You have to, and people don't want to do that. And that's the only way you can fix it. You have to accept it first before you can go on the journey. A lot of folks never even start the journey, man. They never start the journey because they live in this fake life that who they want to be, they act like they are, but they're not because they haven't fixed all this stuff yet. You got to fix this first before we can start our journey in life. So that's why I have them make this list. You fix these problems, now your journey can begin because you no longer care about how people are judging you. When you care more about how someone's judging you, you're going to stay right there. There's no forward momentum. So that's the whole thing about that list. You're not the smartest person in school. I had that issue. So my big thing was how I addressed that problem was I had to sit down. Each thing that is wrong with you has to be a focal point. You can't look at this gigantic list and say, I got to change all this shit. My God, this is crazy. No. You take off the first one. I want to be smarter. For me, that was my thing. I have to become more intelligent. I have such a severe learning disability, man. I can't retain shit. I had to now get that one thing and then strategize in that one problem. How can I do this? I'm not going to learn like you. I'm not going to learn like anybody else. How am I going to figure this out? So I then figured out, okay, where are my strengths here? Where are my weaknesses in learning? All right, man, how am I going to do this? And I figured out a way to do it by just strategizing. So how I learn to this day, if I have a big manual to study, I will have to get a bunch of spiral notebooks from the daggone store. And each page, I have to write each page out, maybe 10 times. So there was a 1,000-page dive manual that I got 18 months before I went to dive school. Most people, I'm not smart, I'm gonna go see if I can pass this test. I realized, hang on a second, I'm not smart. How can I get past this? How can I get through this obstacle? I need to acquire this book 18 months in advance because it could take me 18 months to write down each page over and over again to then put it to memory. So when the question came up, I had written that question so many times down on paper that I can recall, okay, page 71 was where I remember seeing this, and I can recall it that way. And that's how I did it. So you got to strategize on each problem you have in life. Slowly break down that problem. Don't think about all the problems you have, just one at a time. And before you know it, you fix all these problems, but you cannot focus on all of them. Just on the one thing at a time.
There's a concept in your book that permeates the whole book and I think really is one of the most important things for people to understand in their own life, certainly to understand you, and it's the notion of detesting mediocrity. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about that. How did you instill it in your life? How can other people instill it in theirs?
Don't fuck you up. You got protection.
One of the biggest things in the world. A lot of us, mediocrity is everywhere right now. And we're all trying to find an easy way out. And we're judging ourselves. Let's say there's 10 people in this room and we're all mediocre. But I'm the best of the mediocre people. I now think I'm great. I'm great. We surround ourselves around people that make us feel great. They tell us what we want to hear. The second we put ourselves amongst the uncommon people, we don't like that feeling, that challenging feeling of that person who's waking up at 3:30 in the morning and say, hey, put your shit on, we're going for a run. We don't like that challenge. We like that person who says, hey, you know, man, I don't feel good today, man. And they say, oh, it's okay, brother. We'll take a day off, man. We'll get a pizza and shit, watch the game. We like that. We love that feeling. Why? Because you understand, man, we're good, bro. We don't want that motherfuckers like this. Hey, man, no, bro. Get your fucking shit on, man. Stop being a punk. We don't want that in our lives. We don't want that person who's constantly challenging our weaknesses. We want that person who's constantly, making us feel nice and good and secure in ours. That's the mediocrity of life. We want to be the best amongst the average people. People wonder, how do you stay hungry all the time? Because after I accomplish something, I don't sit back like a lot of guys who graduate buds, graduate this, graduate that. They get comfortable. They wonder why I'm getting weak, man. I don't know, I lost my edge. What's going on? Because once you hit the top of the fucking mountain, guess what happened? I'm good. So you wonder why you're falling down now. Because once you reach the top of the mountain, you got to build a fucking another one. That's mediocrity. There's a lot of people in mediocrity who have a nice resume, but they're one-timers, man. They hit a one-time deal. They busted it open, got a lot of money, but they're good. You're mediocre now, man. What are you fucking doing today, tomorrow, the next fucking day? That's why I don't listen to theorists. I don't listen to all that bullshit. I listen to a motherfucker who's like this, man. What's wrong, man? I'm fucking tired, dude. Why are you tired? Because tomorrow, I gotta do the fucking shit again, man. Whatever the shit is that made me fucking nauseous and sick to my stomach, it made me hurt. There's no ending. And that's the person I listen to. That's the person who's gained knowledge. You gain knowledge through suffering. And on the other end of suffering is a world that very few have ever seen. It's a beautiful world because that's where you find yourself. You don't find yourself in over here. You find yourself on the other end. Like the 100-mile race I was on, I ran it for 24 hours. I found myself on the other end of that fucking race. That 19 hours, I found, wow, there's a whole nother fucking world out here that I've never even saw. But the world's in your mind. And that's what all that mediocrity is about. Mediocrity is contagious. Not getting civilized is about having a savage mentality. Civilized is something where people, it's a comfortable world. A lot of us say, like for instance, I see these athletes right now who retire. I'm 38, I'm 39. I did 20 years at the top of my game, and I'm chilling out now. You see them a year later and how they look. What the hell just happened to you, dude? What the hell? You're one of the greatest athletes of all time. Kids looked up to you. Women, men of all ages looked up to you. And they hit the pinnacle where it's time to retire, and their mind says, whew, I'm civilized. The worst thing that could ever happen to any human being is they become civilized. It's that total accountability. Like even when you retire, there's a motherfucker looking at me and judging me right now, man. I was the baddest person to ever live. It doesn't go away, man. You got to wake up. Even though you retired, you never retired. You're setting the example every single day of your life. And being civilized feels so good. I'm sorry, man. Once you get to the top, you may retire, but you ain't never coming back home, man, because now you're judged. People see you falling off. You want to be that guy who knows I may be retired from the sport or from whatever I did, but I'll be damned if you ever see me looking like shit, feeling like shit, not arriving. People, I've arrived mentality. You're always setting the example. Civilization feels so good. These comfortable feelings are what people want. They want retirement. They want that. They need that. It's a yearning feeling. I want it too. People love putting a label on me about, my God, man, you're just wired different. I'm not fucking wired different, dude. I'm thinking right now, after I got past my stuttering thing, now I'm on a roll, I'm good now. You know what I'm thinking about right now? I gotta fucking wake up tomorrow and do the same shit again. I gotta leave this fucking interview and go stretch out for 2.5 hours. I hate that shit. But guess what it does though? I'm constantly callousing over my victim's mentality that I once had growing up. Every day you have to do this shit. Because why? When you stop doing it, you don't just maintain it. If you stop shooting a gun, you're not gonna be a great shot if you pick a gun up a year from now. The only way to keep from getting rusty is to constantly oil that motherfucking machine. The machine is this. You gotta keep challenging it every day.
What do people come up to you and ask you the most?
How do I do it? How am I able to do what I do on a daily basis? You know, how do I fight the demons? Because they hear me speak and I'm very raw and real. How do you fight my insecurities? All these things. And they're there every day. They're there every day. Like you said, I'm in search for a feeling. I'm not in search for a trophy. I'm not in search for love. I'm not in search for more followers on Instagram or social media. When I started this journey years ago, and I realized that I'm going to be somebody, and I'm searching for a feeling of true victory for myself, and only myself. The second I shut out the whole world and realized that one thing, that I am in this world alone. I'm fighting in this race by myself. Yeah, I'm all about people, I'm all about team, I'm all about that shit. But I'm really all about right now and in my life, just like you said, no one knows the real truth about me, how hard I really go. I don't care if anybody knows. I don't want anybody to know. I'm an introvert. I live an introverted life. And I love that about me. That right there is my fuel. Is I know that there's really no one out there grinding like me. And if they are, so be it. If I know about you, I'll make sure that I up my game. That's what the mentality is all about. My whole thing is a mentality thing. Like I told you the last time I was on the show, I viewed myself as the weakest person on the planet Earth. My goal in life was to, in my mind, believe I'm the hardest man alive. And that's why the whole thing is can't hurt me. That's what it's about. It's about whatever you think you are, you have to make that dream a reality. But that's where the hard part is making that dream reality. That's where the hard work comes. That's where people know, how do you keep grinding every day? You have to make those insecurities, those fears. Like when I was 300 pounds, I didn't have any drive. I'm gonna go be a Navy SEAL. What kind of stupid shit is that, 300 pounds? There wasn't like a drive to go be a Navy SEAL. I was an insecure, lying kid, afraid. I had to look at my insecurities and in my fear and find drive in that. We're all looking for passion. Passion's all around you. You have a whole fucking stack of it all around you. It's your insecurities, all that shit. You gotta dive deep in that shit. It's all in there. All the energy and fuel you need is right in yourself. It's all there. You got a lot of stuff to do to overcome. And you know, that's where I found it. I found it right there in my own insecurities. I found drive in my own insecurities. And that's the most powerful thing in the world. When you can find drive in your own doubt, fear, insecurities, you become very unstoppable. I believe in a higher power. Don't know the name, don't know where it's coming from, don't know anything like that. But I believe that this power, and visualize with me real quick. Let's say it's a man up there or a woman, whatever, and they have a chart. And when you're born, they say David Goggins, born February 17th, 1975 at 6 a.m. They write the chart down because they can see everything. They know exactly what you're fucking supposed to be. They know what you're supposed to be. You die, you go to so-called heaven. You arrive at heaven, I'm 300 pounds. I retired as an Ecolab guy, which is okay. It's just a job, whatever. I go up there and God looks at me and he shows me my chart. And my chart on there says you were supposed to be a Navy SEAL. You're supposed to weigh 185 pounds. You're supposed to be one of the smartest people on the planet, this, all this. You see this. And now you're in heaven, you made it to heaven, but you're like, God, Doug, I was supposed to live that life. I was supposed to live that life. And then you find out that the reason why, because we all think that if we pray on it, if we do this, if we do that, whatever, if we don't work, we just, whatever, it's going to magically happen for us. No, I believe that when I'm all said and done with, my whole job is to outwork the chart. Whatever the fucking chart says about me, the all-knowing power up there, I want to get up there and say, him look at me and say, I know everything. I didn't fucking see this. I didn't fucking see this. I want to feel that. I want to get to the other end of this fucking world And however I'm being judged, whoever's judging me, to look at me and say, I did not fucking know. I had you at 185, I had you at this, but all this other shit, I was riding as you were living it. I want to find more. All I can. And in that fucking sack of shit, you have to dive in that to find more. Because if you're not willing to go in there and face yourself, you're not gonna find anything. You're gonna live right here on surface, man, right here on surface. So if there is an ending to this world and there is somewhere to go and there's a judgment, you're gonna get there and you might see a chart. And that chart may tell you who the fuck you should have been. And now you get the rest of your life to think about that. Man, I could have lived a much better life if I just would have just suffered a little bit more. If I just would have went in that shit and realized I had so much more. But fear and the 40% and living here versus living here, being afraid, stopped me. So I'm a big guy in visualizing. I'm a big guy in making a world. It may not exist. To me, it does. To me, it does. And I'm overpowering myself every day. And you got to find tools to do that. That's the tool that I use. So that's what it's all about. Your biggest enemy, the most important conversation you will ever have in your fucking life is the one you have with yourself. You wake up with it, you walk around with it, you go to bed with it. Eventually, you're going to act on it, whether you're good or bad. You have to. That's why the whole thing about this book I have, it's about you. It is about you. It's strictly about you finding who you are. So many people die, live 100 years, never fucking know who they are. Never know who they are. You have to look in that mirror and know there's so much more in here, man. Because I can literally right now be a 300-pound guy spraying for cockroaches still to this day. If I did not look in that mirror and say, there has to be more to this. This can't be it. And then willing to go into it, dive deep into it, and give all I have to find it. So that's what all that's about. I can't believe I'm here. That kid who was in the fetal position, the majority of his life, and so much the fact that my body and my hip flexors are tight to this day, that even though I was standing erect, my mind was in the fetal position. And when I looked out amongst all those people, it was a sense of pride that I can't even explain. It's the moments of 3 hell weeks. It's the moments of in that room by myself studying for hours and hours and hours, trying to catch up with all the kids who are above me. It's just those moments, like the real raw moments of life that was like, boom, hit me and we're gone. But I was like, I did that. I overcame that shit. You know, it's like, it's this power behind all that shit. And that's the feeling I was looking for in my life. I found it. It wasn't money, it wasn't fame, it wasn't awards. It was that feeling I have right now. The feeling of I'm about to break down, but it's not of like, oh my God, I'm upset. It's like I worked myself so hard that I turned a person this fucked up into this motherfucker right here. Not off of reading a fucking book off a theorist, off of going to work on myself and saying, I don't know how to do this, but I know that to get over there to that fucking side, I gotta grind myself into a fucking fine powder. And I did it. I did it off a sure will. And very few people will know how that feels. Very few. Well, you can go on TV. You can put your life on a billboard You're not ashamed of who the fuck you are. You're not ashamed of what life made you, what you helped life make you. All that shit, all that bad shit that's now in this big pot that's stirring, you're no longer ashamed of it. You realize we're all fucked up. Stop judging yourself against other fucked up people who have hidden it better than you. That's all they've done. They've masked their shit better than you have, and now they're flipping it back on you and saying you're fucked up. I want you to realize that this world, life, is one big head game. And once you learn to play the motherfucking head game, it's no longer a game anymore at all. You can start living your life.
Tell these guys where they can find the book.
So the book right now is called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And it's on Amazon right now. It's a raw, real book. It's not a 5-step book. It's a real book about developing habits on how to overcome yourself. And I believe all of us humans have an equation like, pi is 3.14. That's how you solve for that equation. Every human being has a different equation. And there's not like some cookie cutter book of, hey, read this book and you'll be fixed. No, you gotta figure out your own personal equation. And once you figure out that equation, you now become a mathematical fucking genius about yourself. And that's what this book does. It makes you a fucking genius about who the fuck you are. And then from there, once you realize 3.14 is pi, you can solve any fucking equation in the world. That's what it's about.
Very humbled to be up here talking to you all today. For a living, I'm a motivational speaker, and I speak to thousands of professional athletes, from the biggest names to the smallest names. And when I saw Doc walk in here with the Congressional Medal of Honor, this is the first time in my life I got nervous to speak in front of a crowd. That's how much I respect this man up here. I was reading about this man back in the day, so I'd like to thank the VFW very much for giving me this award. It means more to me than anything I've ever received in my entire life. I'd like to thank my grandfather, Sergeant Jack Gardner, who is now deceased. This would be the happiest day of his entire life. I'd like to thank my mom up here, who never picked me up when I fell. She taught me how to get up when I was knocked down. You have no idea how big of a deal this is to me. I was not always this strong guy you see. I went through a lot of hard times in my life to get here today. I tried once to get in the Air Force to be an Air Force pararescueman, and I quit for fear of the water. I was 175 pounds. I left the Air Force 4 years later at 300 pounds. I went from 175 to 300 pounds. All I wanted to be was an uncommon man. And my whole life, I was not that. Much worse than that. I read stories about men like you, Doc, who had the courage to jump on grenades and stuff like that. And I watched a show on Discovery Channel of guys carrying boats and logs, Navy SEAL training. And I decided to make a change in my life. And I called the recruiter up. I was 6'1" and 300 pounds. He laughed at me. 7 other recruiters laughed at me. One recruiter finally said, Come on in, I'm too busy to talk to you on the phone. I walked in the recruiter's office and he looked at me and he said, you're fat and you're black. I said I want to be a Navy SEAL. I didn't know there had only been 35 African American Navy SEALs at that time in over 70 years. He said I basically had to lose 106 pounds in less than 3 months because of my age. I was getting too old. I came back 3 months later, 106 pounds lighter. I have the most respect I can possibly muster up for all of you in this room. I know what it takes to be a combat soldier, and I used to look for courage. I thought courage was a man who won the Medal of Honor. It is. But courage is a man who's willing to put those boots on every single day of his life to go out there and fight for this country where nobody even knows what the hell they're doing or where the hell they're at. You do it for the man beside you. Thank you.